WR, etc. So, School of Chemical and Biotechnology is one of the schools in Shastra University with about 900 UG students, 260 PG students, which we consider our strength. School of Chemical and Biotechnology, we shortly call it as SCBT. And there are about 110 faculties with more than 90% of them with PhDs, and the remaining are pursuing their PhDs. And there are biotechnology department, bioinformatics department, bioengineering, chemical engineering departments in SCBT. And SCBT also has several research centers, and there are more than 50 research laboratories with 65 ongoing research projects, and 80 ongoing research projects are completed. All these research projects were externally funded by various prestigious funding authorities. So the centers in SCBT are CARISM, which is primarily involved in Indian system of medicine, research in Indian system of medicine, and Center, which is involved in research in nanotechnology and advanced biomaterials. And we also have a Center for Preclinical Studies, and CREED, which organizes this webinar, is a Center for Research in Infectious Diseases, and we also have Center for Energy Storage and Conversion. So more about CREED that organizes this webinar. CREED is comprised of 12 faculty members from the School of Chemical and Biotechnology in Shastra. And these 12 faculty members and their corresponding laboratories are involved in various fields such as bacterial pathogenesis, viral related infections, fungi, and other neglected diseases like leishmaniasis as well. So there are totally 8 completed extramurally funded research projects of about 2.2 crores from CREED, and there are 12 currently ongoing research projects of about approximately 3.75 crores, which are all sponsored by various extramural funding agencies like DST, DBT, BIRAC, and ICMR. These are the programs that we offer at School of Chemical and Biotechnology in Shastra. The UG programs are BTech in Bioengineering, Bioinformatics, Biotechnology, and Chemical Engineering. We also offer PG programs, MTech, Big Data Biology, which we are offering from this year, and Industrial MTech in Industrial Biotechnology, MTech in Medical Nanotechnology. Similarly, we also offer various MSc courses, MSc in Biotechnology, MSc in Chemistry, MSc in Bioinformatics, MSc in Molecular Genetics, and we also offer an M-Optom course, which is in collaboration with Sankar Nethralaya. Similarly, UG B-Ophthalmology course is also offered. That is also in collaboration with Sankar Nethralaya. And there are PG courses, integrated PG courses, like 5 years integrated in biotechnology and medical nanotechnology. Similarly, we also have MSc integrated chemistry and biotechnology, and of course, we all have PhD programs in all fields of specializations in the school. We are also very active in social media and over the internet, and you can follow us through Facebook and also through our websites, where we post our regular updates about the programs we offer and other news that are offered from Shastra University. And with that, I request Dr. Srinandan and Ms. Veena Nair to take over the presentation from now on. Thank you.
So, welcome everyone and good evening, and thank you, Dr. Arunachalam. As I told, I confess in the beginning that it would be a very elementary level kind of presentation, and the presentation consists. Before I go into presentation, I would like to introduce my lab at Shastra University. We are a small group of people working on different biofilms in the lab. And you can see my group over here, which is a very small group, but we do a lot of work on different kinds of interactions in the biofilm. We also come out with some scientific strategies to thwart or to stop the pathogenic biofilm. We also research on novel tools to detect biofilms, which are in both environment as well as in the infection. And we also come out with some, we do some research on biofilm based media to industries kind of thing, so that it can be used for nitrogen waste removal. And we are also currently developing different biofilm based tools to isolate unculturable bacteria, because more than 98% of the bacteria are unculturable as of now. So we are also developing certain tools in this particular direction. So in this talk, what we'll be doing is we have four different parts. One is the first part is the introduction. Second and third part is on pathogenesis of specific bacteria, and the fourth part is on the therapy of this infection bacteria. Okay, infection, which is that. So I'll be giving a bit of introduction for each of the parts, but the main presentation today, the presenter will be my PhD student Veena Nair, who has a very good experience in infectious diseases in diagnosis and in hospitals, and it's also her research work over here. So I'll just give some introduction for all the four units, but most of the talk will be done by Veena. At last, finally, both of us will be open for any kind of questions you have, or you want to discuss or comment on any of these kind of things. Okay. So the first part will be the introduction of the pathogenesis and what are the pathogens kind of thing which Veena will be presenting. So mostly she'll be presenting on the different kinds of strategies, which the common strategies which the different infectious bacteria they use to infect a particular host. And let's start with Veena. Yes, Veena, up to you. Yes.
Hi guys, hope you are all safe. I am Veena, so I am going to introduce today's guest, that is the pathogen. I am going to tell you about what is a pathogen. Pathogen is something which is given birth to a substrate. It is an infectious agent, that is a germ that can cause disease or any illness. That is we are referring as pathogen. Then, according to the research held, the count of bacteria is newly pathogenic bacteria is almost 541 species of newly pathogenic bacteria are found, and the novel viruses are spreading nowadays in more. Then, according to the recent research done by ICMR, the non-communicable diseases are more, that is 65.4%. But in 1990, it is 60.9% only. So I am talking about some hosts, our body, how it is fighting against the pathogen. The first line of defense. What will happen to our body when the pathogen will start encountering us? The first line of defense in our body is the skin. Then it comes the mucous membrane. Mucous membrane comprises of all the antibodies, all the glycolysis, everything. It helps to restrict the entry of the pathogen into our body. Then about microbiota, I will discuss this guy later. Then other lines of defenses are our pH, saliva. Saliva contains lysozyme. It will prevent, it will kill the organism. Then about the microbiota. Microbiota about the microbiota are the organisms which are already present in our body. It helps to prevent the organisms, the pathogenic organisms to enter in our body. Then there are different types of immunity are present. First is the adaptive immunity. Adaptive immunity, there is different from innate immune response, because innate immune response consisting of all the skin, saliva, all things. But in adaptive immunity, we are acquiring from. That is, there are 4 characteristics for adaptive immunity. First is the specificity. Specificity means only for the specific pathogen the body's immune response will react. That is, for particular one organism is entering, for that organism only the antibody is produced. Antibody means the human immune system, which will produce against only that pathogen. Then about the memory cells. Memory cells means if we are getting one infection and we are taking something like vaccines or something and we are restricting the organism and later the same organism is encountering us, that is the second encounter, our body will remember this organism or this pathogen has came and encounter at the first. So we have already stored some antibodies and it will release the antibodies and will kill the organism. Then diversity, in pathogens there will be so many diversity, like there is antigenic determinants will be there. Sorry, antigenic determinants will be there, and our body will produce action against that pathogen. Then discrimination between cells and non-cells. That means there are organisms which are already present in our body and the organism is coming outside from the body. So our body knows to encounter which one. That is cells, the organism present inside our us, or the pathogen is coming from outside. Then the body's response if an encounter comes with a pathogen. First and foremost is the inflammation. What will happen when any harmful things enter to our body? First, there is 4 terms like rubor, roller, scalar, and tumor. Rubor is redness. The root or the infected site of entry of the pathogen will become red color, and there will be of course pain, and there will be heat on that part, and it will be swelling. These 4 things comprises of inflammation. Then next thing, fever. Fever is if any infection comes to us, the body temperature will increase. That is the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is a part of the brain which controls all the temperature of our body. So if an infection occurs in your body, what happens is that our temperature will increase and it is a rescue mechanism. It will speed up our body's reaction so that we can fastly remove the organism or the pathogen which encountered our body. So actually I am saying the host means our human body and the pathogen, there is a vast strategy is going on because it is an encounter only because pathogen is giving some fighting against humans and humans are also fighting against pathogens. It is an India-Pakistan war like that. So first and foremost is for vast strategy, the pathogen should transmit from one host to another. That is one human body to the another or from one host to another. Second thing, the organism should have to adhere. Adhere means to bind with the human cells. Then only it can penetrate inside to the host cell. That is called the invasion. Then after the invasion, the pathogens have to go into the immune system and they themselves have to rescue against the host reaction. Host encounter which will restrict their growth or capacity to cause in the infection. Then after that, the toxicity. Toxicity means the compound which is produced by the microorganism which can restrict the host immune response. Then in the battleground, that is human body may be the battleground. That is already the pathogen is entered. How the pathogen is entering is by adherence. Adherence is the binding of this pathogen to the human body. By using in bacteria, there are few structures, few organelles like we have our hands, legs, everything. Like the bacteria all have some organs like phyla, By using the phyla only, the bacteria will adhere to the organ, to the host, that is our human body. And there are glycolipids and glycoproteins present in them. It helps to bind with the host cell. Then about the adhesins is the protein which is present in some organism, which will help to strongly bind the host cell. Then about the biophilips. Biophilips are something like it's an aggregate of bacteria. The bacteria will aggregate together in a sheath-like structure. That sheath we are calling technically as extracellular substrate. That we will discuss later. Then there are different types of weapons. Weapons means the bacteria is using some tactics to prevent the host immune response. First is the capsule. In the capsule, what happens is that capsule will restrict the immune cells inside the human body to mingle or to eat them. That is capsule. Then flagella helps to move the bacteria, and the fimbriate it helps to attach the organism to the host cell. Then what will happen in the encounter? What will happen when a pathogen or a microorganism will enter to our body? First is that our body will recognize the pathogen and that it is from outside. So it will act against the pathogen. So first they will produce a new cell called macrophage. Macrophage will help to eliminate the organism. First, what the bacteria will come and by using the phagocytosis. Phagocytosis is the mechanism of macrophage to engulf this bacteria. What will happen is bacteria will enter and inside the macrophage there is a organelle or a part called phagosome. This phagosome and bacteria will bind together, and there is another part called lysosome. This lysosome will bind with the phagosome, and bacteria will be killed and it will be eliminated out of the body, out of the macrophage. This is called exocytosis. Then what will happen if the bacteria has the capacity to restrict or to sustain inside the macrophage? So what will happen is that those type of pathogens are called as intracellular pathogens. One of the best example I should say is Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It can cause tuberculosis. What will happen in tuberculosis is normally the macrophages can't eat the bacteria. So the bacteria will go inside the macrophages, and one strategy is that they escape or they prevent the fusion of lysosome with the phagosome. Or sometimes the third strategy is that they can survive inside the phagolysosome and they can reproduce further and will cause the infection. So, like bulletproof for army men, there are some immune proofs of bacteria like flagellum, cytosine. Like that, there are some like gun, tankers, like that. Appendages of the bacteria to help them to restrict the immune cells to attack them. So next, this is called biophilips. What exactly happening is that when the macrophage is coming for engulfing the organism, they will attach to it. The bacteria will attach to a surface and will, like we are inside on blanket, we are hiding like that. The bacteria will produce a comb or a polymer or a matrix called extrapolymer matrix, and it will hide inside that matrix, so that the macrophages can't even attack them, or the antibodies produced by our body can attack.
So till now, thank you, Veena. So till now, what we have seen how the pathogens, that is the microbes which cause infection, when they come into our body, we call our body as a host, and when they come into the host, what will happen is, what is the interaction between the host and the microorganism we saw, such as the host. So during the interaction as a summary, what Veena had told was how though we have so much of microbe thwarting kind of strategies in us, it's very difficult for a microbe to just cause any infection in us. But still, some of the microbes, they have certain strategies where, for example, as she told, biofilm, once it forms a biofilm, our immune cells, which are called as macrophages, they cannot detect them, or they produce something called as capsule, and they evade the immune system, just like they come into the bunkers of the enemy. They come into the bunkers, that is the macrophage cells itself, our own cells, our own immune cells, and inside they stay. It is just like an enemy soldier coming into the bunker of our soldiers, and our soldier will not at all target our own bunkers. It is like that. So staying with the enemy, they survive with the enemy. Now let us see some of the examples like this, specifically for some of the organisms which cause disease. First one is about the Salmonella, which we also work in our lab. It's very interesting actually. Salmonella causes some infection called typhoid, the typhi, and some species like subspecies like Tarataki. All these things, they will cause the typhoid fever. And there is also one more subspecies of Salmonella bacteria called Salmonella typhimurium. They don't cause typhoid fever, whereas they cause something called colitis. So in colitis, what happens is that the strategies between these two different subspecies are very different. For example, the Salmonella typhi is a very stealthy strategy, very secretly it goes and hides inside the host cell. Whereas the Salmonella typhimurium has a frontal attack. It just grows more and more and just attacks our immune cells. And later it will become very acute fever and it will be washed away. Whereas a stealthy attack like Salmonella typhi, it becomes a chronic infection. That is, chronic is a long-term kind of infection. Okay, this will be discussed more by Veena now. Okay. Yeah.
So next, our topic is about Salmonella. Salmonella bacteria is divided into the size shape of bacteria is different. Like okay, some with a round shape, some with a long shape. They are called as the long bacteria. They are called as bacteria, and the round one they are called as okay. So Salmonella species is a rod-shaped bacteria. The bacteria which is long shape, that is called as Salmonella. That bacteria is Salmonella. So in this figure, you can see there is tail like something is going on. That we call as flagella. So by using that flagella, only the Salmonella is going inside the host and it is causing the disease. So how the Salmonella is entering into our body? So this is a era of junk food, no? So uncooked and improper chemical food we are eating. What will happen is that the organism will enter into our mouth. Inside our mouth, there is saliva. By saliva, the lysozyme is present. The lysozyme will kills almost bacteria, but there is some bacteria which will escape from this and will go inside our alimentary canal. I mean, use esophagus and will go inside the our stomach, our gut. It will go inside our gut. Okay, in our gut. Then what happened is that what will happen in our stomach? There is columnar epithelium. Epithelial cells will be there. First, the organism will come. It will approach. Then it will penetrate the cells and it begin to multiply in the cells. After this, what happened is that there are, because of our body's inflammatory system, as I explained before, inflammation, there is some secretion of water, electrolytes, everything will happen in our body as a defense mechanism, and that's what that part is we called as diarrhea. And after this, some of the bacteria will enter inside our systemic circulation. After entering the systemic circulation, the macrophages, as I told before that, the macrophages will come and engulf the bacteria. But some of the bacteria will escape from the macrophages and will enter into the bloodstream and causes typhoid fever. It is a condition if we are not taking antibiotic properly, it will cause even death. So how the Salmonella is fooling macrophages? When macrophages will come and attack Salmonella, macrophages will engulf the Salmonella, and Salmonella will produce, like injection, it will produce a T3 secretory system. This T3 secretory system produces some protein which will prevent the lysosome to bind with the phagosome. If lysosome is binding with the phagosome only, the bacteria should be killed. What here is happening is the protein which will prevent the lysosome to fuse with the phagosome, and the macrophage can't able to recognize the pathogen and it can't kill. That is the strategy of Salmonella to fool the macrophage. Then there are different host defense mechanism is present in our host. Host I am depicting here is our human body. In our human body, the pH of the gastric acidity, the pH is less than 3.5, 3.5 only the pH. So it will restrict the organism. It will kill that pH. But there are some organisms which can escape from that also and can cause infection. There are peristalsis. Peristalsis means the movement inside our stomach, and lactoferrin, which is present in the mother's milk, and the lysozyme, which is present in the saliva. All these defense mechanisms are there in the host also, but there are some cases Salmonella can escape from all these things and will cause the disease. So epidemiology, mainly I told you that it is a foodborne disease, food and waterborne disease. In India, the condition, in 2008, according to this picture, the incident rate is very high, and there is in Salmonella in typhoid infection, there is a interesting point is called asymptomatic human carriers. Like now Corona is there, some people don't have any symptoms or signs, but still they can transfer the infection from one person to another. Like that also, for Salmonella infection, also there is asymptomatic human carriers are present. One of the best example I should tell is Typhoid Mary. So this is a television series. This is a picture I screenshot from a television series aired in past, I think 5 or 6 years before. The name of that television series is Dark Times. Still it is in YouTube, you can watch maybe. So what is happening is that the typhoid, what about Typhoid Mary is, Typhoid Mary is a maid. She is an asymptomatic carrier. Wherever she had gone for working, the family members are getting infection. So later she is getting quarantined. She got caught and quarantined for 26 years. Even 14 days we can't stay in home. But how come 26 years she was in quarantine, and she died at 1916. Then how do I know that we have Salmonella infection? First is fever we will get. There will be ulcers in the stomach. There will be chills. There will be abdominal pain, and the presence of our white blood cells. As you know that our blood is composed of red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, etc. The white blood cells count will be above normal. So of course diarrhea will be there. Then how we can stop the OH? How we can stop the OH of the Salmonella? By properly washing our hands. Cooked food we have to eat. Do not defrost food at room temperature, and hot food should be cooked at least 140 degrees Fahrenheit, and wash everything after contact with the raw sources. The interesting fact about the Salmonella infection is that in 2010, there is an outbreak in America that the peanut butter and in pistachios, there is the people are infecting by consuming the peanut butter as well as pistachio. There are almost 3,000 people had affected in one area in America because of this typhoid fever and gastroenteritis.
Now, we'll be talking about urinary tract infections, which are also very important infections, which have a very wide kind of morbidity throughout the world. Okay, so till now you all have seen the Salmonella infections, which are very much studied to understand how the bacteria actually infect. Now we'll be studying about the urinary infection, which is caused by, in our lab we work more on E. coli, Uropathogenic E. coli it is called, and this organism is implicated in around...
Just a minute, Dr. Srinandan. Just a minute. Can you put slides in full screen mode? It's not.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll come back. Yeah. Before putting the slide, the important thing is these urinary tract infections, actually they are very highly known throughout the world, and they cause a lot of morbidity throughout the world, and a lot of cost is involved in the hospitalization. Okay, so this is very interesting also. Why? Because other infection like Salmonella infection, what we saw was it goes through the mouth and it goes through the alimentary tract. So we actively eat food, and it's very easy for the organism to contaminate some food or water which we intake. But urinary tract infection is something reverse, where you don't take anything inside, but actively these organisms have to ascend till the urinary bladder or till the kidney and then cause the infection. And very interesting in this is, which Veena also will be showing, is about biofilm formation in the blood host cell, where intracellularly inside our own cells, lot many organisms they stay inside the host cell and they cause a very chronic infection. Chronic in the sense a very long-term infection, and once it is cured with antibiotics, again these bacteria will not get killed. Again and again they cause the infection. So
the topic is about urinary infections. First, I want to show something about the structure and function of urinary system. As I think everybody know that our urinary system comprises of two kidneys, ureter and urethra, as well as urinary bladder. Urinary bladder is the storehouse of urine. Then the pathogens which is affecting our urinary tract. This is 75% of our urinary tract infections are caused by UPEC. UPEC means uropathogenic E. coli. As sir said, we are working under uropathogenic E. coli because 75% of the uncomplicated as well as complicated UTA is the reason is E. coli. Then second comes Klebsiella pneumonia, then Staphylococcus saprophyticus, Enterococcus, then group B, Streptococcus, Proteus mirabilis, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, Staphylococcus aureus, and Candida species. So how the UPEC bacteria, UPEC is causing infection. UPEC means, as I said, uropathogenic E. coli. Then uropathogenic E. coli will come from the contamination of periurethral area with the organism, and it will go inside to the urethra and will reach the urinary bladder. What will happen in the urinary bladder is that it will aggregate and will form biofilm. As I said before, that biofilm is the aggregation of bacteria which produces some extra polymeric substances, matrix. It is like a blanket, and which bacteria will be like sitting simply and will cause infection. And what will happen next is that it will then ascend to the kidney, through the ureter and will reach the kidney. When it reaches kidney, what will happen is that there is so many infections like pyelonephritis, kidney malfunction, everything will cause, and the organism will enter into the systemic circulation. Systemic circulation means enter into the bloodstream and will cause bacteremia. Bacteremia means bacteria inside the blood. Then, as I said, that first in the intestine, actually E. coli is present in the intestine. From the intestine, it will enter to the urinary tract. Inside the urinary tract, it will penetrate inside to the infect or invade inside the urinary bladder cells, and it will form the biofilm. Then, after the formation of the biofilm, the cells will degrade or degrade, and the bacteria will go inside. That is happening. So it will enter into the bloodstream after coming out of the cells and will cause bacteremia or septicemia, like that infection it will cause. So this is the biofilm. You saw this net-like, there is extra polymeric substances present, and the bacteria is aggregated together with the help of these extra polymeric substances. This is a definition of biofilm. A biofilm is an assemblage of surface-associated microbial cells that is enclosed in an extracellular polymeric matrix. Then what will happen? This is the mechanism of biofilm formation inside the urinary bladder. First, the bacteria will go and attach to the urinary bladder. Then it will form the extra polymeric extracellular matrix. Then it will mature. There are two maturation phases: maturation phase 1 and maturation phase 2. Then after that, it will destruct the extra polymeric substances and will go out. Sometimes the bacteria will go out with the urine, or sometimes the bacteria will again find another substrate inside the, another substrate means another place inside the urinary bladder, and again biofilm. The cycle is will continue like that. This is the biofilm formation inside the bladder cells. Actually, this is the picture by one of my senior, Sandeep. His PhD work was this one, and it is. And the biofilm is formed inside this cells present inside the urinary bladder. That is this thing. This, I think, this round things. That is the biofilm. Then how the OH of E. coli in bladder epithelial cells? First, the uropathogenic E. coli will come by using the pili. Pili is the substrate, like I told, like our hand we have like that. The E. coli have that thread-like thing called pili. It will come and attach to the urinary bladder cell. And what will happen? It will aggregate together. The bacteria will aggregate together and replicate inside the urinary bladder cell. Then after that, when it comes to the maturation and development phase, it will burst and it will go out to the bloodstream or to the urine. Then there are some bacteria which will be as persistence. Persistence means the bacteria will be in dormant stage, and later, if adequate environmental condition comes to them, they will again cause recurrent infection. That is called, if we are getting one-time urinary tract infection, after having antibiotic also, later we will get recurrency because of this.
Okay. Yeah. So what is interesting is in this, how the uropathogenic E. coli goes against the flow. For example, as Veena told, it is having something called pili. Just like lizards, they crawl on the wall. This also just crawls on the wall of the epithelia of the urinary tract. So it's very interesting, where they attach to the walls and just they disseminate and form something called as intracellular biofilms, and this can go on causing a chronic fever or recurrence of the infection. So the next part which Veena will be telling now will be the therapy against these bacterial infections.
This is the slide. This is the presentation of therapy against bacterial pathogens. So I am going to tell you about what is an antibiotic. Actually, when two microorganisms are fighting against each other, one bacteria will produce certain compounds which will kill the other bacteria. So these compounds we are calling as antibiotics. These compounds we are calling as antibiotics. So certain bacteria have certain strategies to escape from this antibiotic. They are using antibiotic altering enzyme, antibiotic degrading enzyme, like efflux pump mechanism. First, I am talking about antibiotic altering enzyme. When the antibiotic will approach to the bacteria and the antibiotic altering enzyme, the certain antibiotic have a certain site of action. Some, for example, the antibiotic named ciprofloxacin have will act on the gyrase of the bacteria, gyrase, and what will happen is that the gyrase will change the shape so that the antibiotic can't bind with the gyrase and the bacteria can't be killed. Then another is antibiotic degrading enzyme, which can degrade the antibiotic which is coming inside the organism, and there is efflux pump. Efflux pump means when the antibiotic goes inside the organism by using the efflux pump, the bacteria will push away the antibiotic. The microorganism will push away the antibiotic, and the antibiotic cannot able to act on the bacteria. So how this organism, this antibiotic, the journey of organisms is a bone voyage means, first there are high number of bacteria which is present in our body, and few are there are high number of pathogenic organisms in our body. Then there are few are resistant to some antibiotic. What will happen next is that these antibiotics kill the infection causing germs and also the good organisms. I told like microbiota. They will kill the pathogens as well as some good bacteria present in our body. So the resistant bacteria which is resistant against that antibiotic will grow inside our body, and later the resistant bacteria will give the resistant power to the normal organism. So there is a term called multi-drug resistance. The drug resistance will evolve in this condition. So according to the recent report by CDC, by 2050, there is more individuals will be die from drug-resistant bacterial infection than from cancer, and it can lead to a great economic loss. So this is the poster done by WHO. They had made because they are warning us that how we can restrict the antibiotic resistance by using antibiotic when prescribed by the certified health professional. And if we are getting some infection, of course, including me, we are going to some medical store or pharmacy and we are buying the antibiotic. So it is not should be practiced. According to the professional, certified health professional only, we have to use the antibiotic. And the full course of antibiotic we have to eat. Like if a doctor is giving 3 days of antibiotics and we are taking only 1 day or 2 days and we are telling, okay, we are fine, okay, now no need. If like that, it is a problem to us. The full course should be taken. I never use the leftover antibiotics, and never share your antibiotics with anyone. And by washing your hands, by personal hygiene, you can make yourself as well as the other people also should protect against the harmful pathogens.
I would like to acknowledge my lab members, which includes all the PhD students, project students and trainees. Our lab is very intellectually stimulating environment with many students, UG, PG and PhD students. We do a lot of every week lab meets. We have in CRID, the journal club, where we discuss on different new research papers which comes out. And I'm very thankful to Shastra University for all the infrastructural facilities and also fellowship for some of my students, and SERP India, which has granted me to do a lot of research, and also the DBT. And thank you all. Now I welcome all different questions if it is there.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Srinandan and Veena Nair, for a very wonderful presentation. We do have a few questions. I'll ask them one by one. The questions, I request the questions to be posted in the chat box. And question is from Vanita T. Her question is, what is the pathogenesis in asymptomatic carrier? If it is the same, then why can't they have symptoms? So basically, she's trying to ask why does asymptomatic carriers doesn't show any symptoms?
This very deep of question. It actually intrigues even the researchers in this field. Frankly, we don't have an answer for it. What could be, but because of the variations, I try to answer this, but because we have not many variations in the nature. For example, even when we do animal studies, we do have variations in the animal, where even after, for example, salmonella, we give them 10 is to power 8 organisms also. Some mice, mouse and all, they will not get the infection. So it's very difficult to explain why this happens. It could be because of the first way in the few slides, Veena showed how we have different kinds of immunity. For example, the innate immunity, we have something called microbiota in the innate immunity itself. And the microbiota, for example, our body is having around 10 trillion our cells, and nearly equal or more than that, we may have even the microbial cells. And these microbial cells may possibly fight with the incoming pathogens. So that could be the reason. Other innate or immune mechanisms could be the reason. And very importantly, than everything, it is a chance for the infection, because from beginning of the presentation you have seen, our body has been selected from many years and we have a very robust immune system. So if any bacteria have to cause an infection, it's not very easy for them. That is the USP of this presentation also. Like we wanted to make the listeners know that the infection by the pathogen is not an easy task. So only, for example, now also we are in a COVIDian era, you can see that there are many asymptomatic carriers. And these people, they are asymptomatic because of various different conditions. There cannot be one cause or two causes, there could be multiple causes. And the infection also which comes in is just a chance, because it has to travel to the tissue where it causes the infection, and to travel to the tissue where it causes this, we call technically as tissue tropism. To travel to that is not an easy task, and it may fail also in many cases, and in some, due to sheer chance or sheer luck, it is able to cause the infection. Okay, I think this answers your thing. One very important basic thing is, because we are having naturally lot of variations in individual to individual, we have the own individuality in us. Okay, yeah.
Srinandan, I can hear
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Can you go to the next question, please?
Yes, the next question is, what happened when the E. coli form biofilm completely without any space in the urinary bladder? So this question is from Janathan and Senthil Kumar.
So, urinary bladder without any space, it cannot be. It is full of space. Bacteria, micron is the size of the bacteria, and together in a biofilm, if we say there are around a few hundreds of them, they require a space of few hundreds. But whereas when you see the urinary bladder, it is a big earth for them. You can imagine we are the bacteria and earth is this thing. So there is no spatial constraint. Only constraints they have is from the immune system. Because as Veena had shown that villi, they have an appendage called villi. Either they attach to the surface. To attach to the surface, they need some receptor to anchor. And the anchor is nothing but here the receptor mostly it is all made up of mannose protein. Mannose, sorry, not proteins, it's sugar. But normally instead of manocyclating the epithelial cells, our body has come with some new innovation where the fucosylates. And because of that, even the anchorage with the bacteria will not be there. Like that, actually, this infection towards the host and the bacteria is a co-evolution of thousands of years, which we don't know, like what exactly is happening. For example, here I would like to also come up with something which was finished by Veena in the presentation. For example, our body, she also mentioned in one slide about the lactoferrin. We have, for example, the mother's milk also has a lot of lactoferrin, which will sequester the iron. So whenever the body senses that there could be an infection, there will be more production of these ferric substances, which will not allow the iron to be given to the bacterial growth. Okay, fever is one more strategy, and we have multiple strategy like that. Here, lactoferrin and the ferric substances are produced by the host so that they sequester the iron. Whereas what the bacteria will do now is they will produce something called siderophore. So that will have more attachment towards the iron, and they will sequester the iron from the ferric substances. So just fight through the evolution between the cross reactivity between the pathogen and the host towards the iron is a co-evolutionary thing. Okay, after that, still now whatever we are saying, bacteria wins the war. They have a siderophore which is having a lot of cooperativity with the iron than the ferric substances. But did our body stop something? No, we produce something called lipocalin 2 substance, and that substance goes and catches hold of the siderophores which are released by the bacteria also. So this kind of co-evolutionary thing goes on. So bladder is, there is no spatial constraint for the bacteria in the bladder. Okay, that is the answer. Yes, Dr. Arnason.
All right. Thank you, Siddharthan. The next question is about latent MTB. Basically, the question is whether those MTB form biofilms and whether they become their virulence change over a period of time, and why does MTB reach latent stage? So actually, there are three questions in a single question.
Okay, so whether MTB forms a biofilm, it is a controversial topic, but I believe it forms a biofilm. So there are also some groups which say that it doesn't form a biofilm. So this I will not go into details of this because there are different groups and different opinions on whether it forms a biofilm during an infection. But outside the post, it does form the biofilm. It is also known to be on surfaces and also in the droplets. It can form biofilm kind of thing. And the second is, why does it form a latent? The question why is something very difficult to answer in the biology. But still I will try. Why it forms latent? Many different bacteria, they form latent stages. And why do they form latent stages? It could be a strategy to survive the onslaught of the immune system at that particular time. But whenever a favorable condition is available, they will germinate. That's what the life, where some life forms, they have this kind of dormancy, and later when favorable conditions are available, they germinate and thus they will cause the infection. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So there are two questions about reinfection. The first is from Tanu Taran, who asks, why does some bacteria go into dormant stage after taking antibiotics and then there is a reinfection? And similar question is from Manasi, who asks, why sometimes after taking a vaccine, after a period of time, there is reinfection, and why is it so?
Okay. On the second question, after taking vaccine, when there is a reinfection, this depends on the efficacy of the vaccine and many different things. I'll not go into it deeply because it should be very specific. But can you repeat the first question?
First question is about antibiotics. So after taking antibiotics,
Okay, okay. So after taking antibiotics with the dormant stages, the bacteria is going for the dormant state, or the dormant stages achieved before antibiotic also, we don't know. These things are very difficult to answer. But these dormant states in the infectious bacteria are called as persister cells. Okay. So what happens over here is, till now, whatever analysis people have studied, in that what we know is persistent cells are very stochastic, that is randomly generated. It is not the antibiotic has come and then it forms a dormant state, not like that. Before itself, it will form dormant state. This is a kind of variation. We spoke about, discussed about the variation in the organism. This going to a dormant stage also is a kind of variation where before the antibiotic itself, they will form dormant structures like persistent cells. And when the antibiotic comes and attacks, when there is an onslaught, other vegetative cells will get killed, whereas dormant will be alive at the time it was in a dormant. Then when the antibiotic is going out of in the environment, it ceases to be there in the environment, just gets germinated, and then there will be an infection again. Same thing is to do with even the biofilm, because the biofilm is nothing but a collective of organisms, just like you see any other collective of higher organisms, like a collective of cattle, collective of prey organisms, flocks of birds, or anything. Here also you have the collective of cells, and when there is an onslaught by the immune system of the antibiotic, some of the peripheral cells get killed, whereas when the diffusion inside the collective is sub-inhibitory concentration also diffuses, then sub-inhibitory concentrations of the antibiotic makes them to recover, like come out with some strategy. So they again activate the gene expression in them, and then they adapt to that particular condition. But the inhibitory concentration, the one which kills them or inhibits them, in that concentration they will get killed or inhibited. But the sub-inhibitory concentration or the sub-bactericidal concentration, which we say by diffusion, the lower bacteria which is in the core of the biofilm or in the depth of the biofilm, they get exposed to sub-bactericidal concentration or sub-inhibitory concentration, and thus they may actually germinate after all the other peripheral cells have been killed. Okay, I hope this answers.
Thank you, Sinandan. Renu has a very interesting question. She asks whether there is any positive effect on formation of biofilms. Does biofilms has any positive effects?
Yeah. For example, as I told you, our body is having around 10 trillion cells, and we have around 10 trillion microbes in us, or more than that also microbes we have in our body. So each we have a later in the second series of webinar, we also have a talk on microbiome in our body, and here we'll give more information about this microbiome. So this microbiome, for example, on the skin, when you see the skin is full of bacteria, we have a resolution at which we cannot see the bacteria. But when we see at higher resolution, say you have in the eye a microscope and you're just assuming and visualizing, there are full of bacteria in your skin, and they are all in the biofilm form. So in our gut, they are in the biofilm form, on the mucous layer, in the oral, on the teeth, they are in the biofilm form. So biofilms are very essential. And when you see some other biotechnological applications, yeah, biofilm is very much used for other biotechnological applications, like for example in the environmental applications where they use it for wastewater treatment, or in the fermentation to produce something like ethanol fermentation, they use biofilm. So there are a whole gamut of benefits by the biofilm, and essentially biofilm is the lifestyle, the predominant lifestyle of the bacteria. When you say bacteria or the microbe, they all live on the surface or in aggregate as a biofilm form. So we need not extrapolate it to some applications, but this is a default state of the bacteria. Yeah.
Thank you, Sinandan. I guess we'll have time for just one more question.
Yes.
So this question is from Rajalakshmi. The question is, how can biofilms help in the spread of antimicrobial resistance in the environment? It might be useful to use biofilms for these two. So basically, she wants to relate antimicrobial resistance with biofilms.
Yeah, it's a very important question. Normally, the biofilms are very well because it's a community. Just like, for example, we are in an apartment or a city. When you compare a village environment and the environment in the urban landscape, these two different environments are there. Where the village landscape is very sparsely populated, whereas when you see Chennai, Pune, Mumbai, all these places, lot of apartments, a lot of crowding, everything takes place. So biofilm is just like that, where crowding takes place of the biofilm. Okay, there are more number of cells which are crowded in the biofilm. So over here, it's very importantly the antibiotic resistance can emerge as well as be transferred. For example, we say a gene where a fragment of DNA is holding the attribute to resist an antibiotic, this can very easily be transferred in the crowd than when they are spatially populated. For example, now we have the COVID in era we are in, and in this era we are told that we have to keep a 6 feet distance. So social distancing is there. Why? Because the virus doesn't transfer. In a way, when there is no social distancing, like a biofilm, very easily the genes which are very important, the fragment of DNA for resisting antibiotics can be transferred laterally into different organisms, and thus they can help in the manifesting the spread of the antibiotic resistant genes in the environment. Okay?
All right. Can we have one more question, Sinandan? We have time for
Yeah.
that.
We have time. I think
So, Dr. Prabhakaran asks, are there any prevention methods for UTI?
Okay, prevention methods for UTI is hygiene. Hygiene is the only preventive method for UTI infection. Once the individual is very hygienic, it can prevent a lot of other infections also. So hygiene is one of the very important for prevention.
That I thank everybody. I thank Dr. Srinandan. I thank Dr. Veena Nair for giving a very wonderful presentation. And I also thank all the participants for their eager participation, their questions, and their interest in this area. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all.